Hey guys, this is Simon with Trade and Perform Coaching. Wanted to do a quick trade review for the ES and CL. It's 5 in the evening, and just kind of going through my own playbook of how we set up a trade. So we had two trades. The best one was CL. That was worth just over 100 ticks today. From point of inception, the best scale I got was actually 100 ticks. 50. Let's see, we ran that from 56.20 to 55.20. Let's see where we were. I forget exactly the entry, but I will go through because I forget what round number we're trading at. But 55.20 down to 53.20. And so I wanted to set that trade up for you, and then I wanted to set up the ES trade that I took in the afternoon and the one I didn't take this morning. So a couple things. When we're trading, we're following process, right? That's the idea behind it. So let's talk about ES coming into the day. So number one thing, we kind of want to go through a checklist of what tipped us off, what was the good, the bad, and the ugly. So when you start off the day, a couple things occurred, right? And this is over here on the 14th. So number one, this is overnight. Yesterday, that's this right here on a 5-minute chart, we had a massive rally. Everyone's aware of that. When you have a massive rally, the first thing you want to look at in ES is, do we or are we able to hold the 50 retrace? That's this right here. And you can see that we were unable to hold the 50 retrace. Not only that, but this morning, had I been willing to trade in the first half hour or so, we actually backside tested or came darn close. I believe we exactly backside tested the 50 retrace. Oh, excuse me, that's the CL. Let me jump over real quick to ES. Apologies. Here, we'll fix that. There's all my drawings from in the room today. And we will go to overnight. So let's shrink this down for a second and go to ES. Okay, so on ES, same story, right? If you pull this in, you will see that we started off the day. There's the 50-60 retrace. We were underneath the 50-60 to begin with. That's always, when you have a big rally and you get behind that 62 retrace, always a negative sign, right? Number one. Number two, when we opened, right, normally if you have and you follow Dalton's Mind Over Market, so this is about our opening right here, right? What you would expect on a trend down overnight is that inventory gets squeezed to the upside. We see it all the time. The market opens up, bam, shoots to the upside. Great example of that would have been yesterday morning. See how all the inventory all night long, people were shorting. As soon as we open, even before the little news announcement, we were already starting to push to the upside. That's what happens when you get inventory short overnight most of the time. That's just how it's designed to work. So, kill the light in here. There we go. So, when I wake up this morning and I see that we're behind the 62 retrace and definitively, right, I'm thinking, wow, the market is in some trouble. That's not a good sign. Number two, we were below, by the time we got to the open, we're hovering right on prior day's low. Not a great place to be, right? After you just rallied and you give this whole thing back. Think about how traders think, right? If you bought yesterday, isn't your presumption that buyers are in control and that we're going to continue higher? Or haven't you just trapped the daylights out of people? And remember, all that was getting sold overnight is futures, not individual stock positions, right? So when you open up, if you bought Spiders or if you bought Coca-Cola or McDonald's or whatever it is that you buy, and you find the market opening up all the way down here and you don't get a bounce, guess what? You have to sell, which is why the rule is if you can't squeeze people out of their short positions on the open from overnight, you've got a major issue. Expect a big leg lower. Additionally, if you'll look, these are the levels of support. And they're actually quite spread out because that's how the volume profile on the TPO is set up. This was resistance up here, and this was support down here, 28.55 to 28.50. And if you'll look the other day, I had written on Stock Twits and Twitter, 28.55. That was when we were over here. I said that was my downside target in the morning. I said there's really nothing there. We get Mr. President Trump's a little announcement about China. The market rallies all the way up. The auction was incomplete to the downside. We consolidate, we suck everyone up in here well into the Asian session, well into 4 in the morning, and then they let the bottom fall out. Why does the bottom fall out? Because bonds, right? Bonds don't rear their head very often, but when they do, they get ugly. we had an inverted yield curve that really scares the crap out of money managers. Inverted yield curves, it generally is a big, very reliable sign of recession, right? And no longer do they give a shit about what POTUS said or China deals. They're thinking recession, get me the hell out of my high beta stocks, right? So you end up with selling. So that's the 5-minute chart. We know support, downside targets are 55 to 45, right? So now if you look, when we come in, so this is the ES chart, I use that profile chart and the support resistance zones as a larger guide, right? Here we are at 8:30 in the morning, right? So the first thing I want to do is look at two things. Number one, prior to 8:30, so let's make it look like what we saw prior to coming in here. And by the way, I was hunting a CL trade, which is why I wasn't trading ES in the morning, right? But you will see what we are looking at is where are the biggest selling pushes that came from overnight, right? This is a technical indicator that I use. And what you'll see is this was resistance, right? And we had absolutely no chance of getting up there, right? It was never tested. Odds are when we get up to this area, that will serve as resistance, but we came nowhere close. The next biggest push, right, after the open, which was right here at 8:30, what was going to serve as resistance? Well, number one, we had consolidation. You had to get above this block right here, right? They consolidated, they tried to bounce it here, and you had to get above that in order to push, right? In order to test this last biggest push to the downside, which was all the way up at 29.02, which is where resistance happened to be sitting. Okay, so you open up, you have this nasty little trend line that you can kind of extend down like this, right? I don't trade off the trend line, but then what you'll look is you'll see we started to get pushes off the open, and we come up with this lovely little push right here, right? So they made a very big effort. As a matter of fact, that big effort was actually the biggest net, if I got it correct, net delta push since the close the prior day. There's a problem with that. That big push could not close us back into the pre-market overnight consolidation, right? We come right up to it, reject right out of it, and pretty much off the open, right? Step number two, we come back afterwards, and they try to break this high, but if you'll notice, when they break this high, buy pressure decreased. Sell pressure hasn't increased yet, but buy pressure has decreased, right? And then what you're ending up with here is a little head and shoulders. Draw this out, here, there comes your head, right? And then we're using our process to figure this out, right? So number one, there's your push, there's your next push, no big deal. There's another push. So this gives a little head fake, right? Closes in right there at 8:36. Again, that's a pretty noisy time. But then you'll see there's two ways or clues that you could have had to short here. As we pushed up, you could have simply outright shorted the consolidation, right? If you could use a bigger stop, it was a great area to look for a trade. Number two, when we get the biggest push of these three pushes, right, which is arguably the second biggest push, you would think, hey, this is one push into this wave. This is a second push. Like usually when you see pushes, they kind of stack up, right? Push one, push two, push three. Maybe there's a little backside testing, but they usually stack up. You get three big pushes. And then this is my algo firing. See that speed bar shift down, speed bar shift down? But when they occur in conjunction with trapping back into a prior buying wave, they produce big rolls to the downside. Now we get a big roll to the downside, and the sellers come out in force. That's at 8:45, right? What everyone tries to do is they say, hey, all the retail traders said that's a break of the low at 78, right? We had the biggest push. Ha, we've got you trapped. And that's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that thought process there. The first 30 minutes were very volatile, and I tend not to trade them, right, because of that. Now, what you will see here, right, is from this original push. See how this ended up being my left shoulder of a head and shoulders pattern? This ended up being my right shoulder, right over here. It came underneath, but it never got the impulse move. And if you follow the rules for a head and shoulders pattern, this is now your biggest delta push. That is a good sign. You now want, after that, to get your left shoulder tested. Guess what they came and did almost to perfection? Tested that left shoulder, right? We made a very big delta push. As a matter of fact, it was the most delta possible. It was the highest delta of up to that point of the day, and we don't break above the swing high, right? Not only that, not only do not break on that swing high, but maybe make a retrace down. And I know what you're saying. Hey, that could have been a head and shoulders the other way. That's true, right? But think about it. There's your head, right? And there's your shoulder. And you could have argued that this is your right shoulder and this is your left shoulder. And you're 100% correct. You could have argued that, except for one problem, right? Number one, in order to break out, right, when this rolled to the downside, you broke IB low, right? So you got the biggest delta push and you broke IB low the first time, right? So that's time number one. You get your biggest buy push, you can't break IB high. Big clue, right? You're watching for clues. That's a very big clue. And it's not unusual for them to set up a head and shoulders opposing one another, right? So next, as we roll along, right, you come up again, and if you look, these are generated by my algos, right? These speed bar shifts are generated by my algos, and they're very, very powerful. You got to remember that if you're looking for a short, this left shoulder has to be what you want to get defended, and it was perfectly, right? You then get a trend line up. Oh, let's fix that. Right, so there's a lot of moving pieces here, right? You then get a trend line up, and I want to show you this, right? See this right here? Roll to the downside, 50, 60 back, run all the shorts out, right? Then we do this little trick right over here, right? You're watching the up and down, up and down. Remember, you're looking back to the left, and now you get the second biggest delta push to the downside, right? And we make a slightly new low, and they try to save it yet again. Not unusual at the 9 o'clock hour. But now, this time, what have you done? See when we pushed up over here, and you said, well, that could have been a head and shoulders the other way. We never break the left shoulder. But over here, when we roll down on the biggest delta, we do break the left shoulder. They come back up one more time, and when we break that shoulder, you will generally get one more stab at it. And this time, that stab produces exactly a 50 retrace, right? Bam, right there at 925. That was the entry you needed, right? Two things are involved in that. Number one, once you see that big push, right, you know no longer do you need to worry about that left shoulder. You just don't want a bar to close above the top of this biggest push, right? That's what's going on. I know it looks like it's crazy with all these drawings, but once you know the pieces step by step, you can see and develop. I just don't want it above 28.84. Very simple, right? There's the roll down, and that's the completion of the downside. Now I can tell you, I didn't get any of that. You know why I didn't get any of that? Because I was over here, that was 935, and I was working CL. So I'm going to go through the same setup on CL, right? So I wait till after here's 930. See, most of my drawings are still there. Here's 930. The number comes out, right? And you'll see what I do is I go around through the course of the day looking for head and shoulders patterns to form, which form all over the place. There's no secret about that. But what you're looking for is the accompanying price action that helps support those moves up and down, right? So if you'll look, what we end up with is left shoulder over here, right? If you look, because I'm looking after the, I'm trying to build this from after when the number comes out. So this is the number right at 930. This is the push above, right? So see on that push above, when we break out, see how tiny, tiny, tiny that buy pressure is waiting? Everyone's waiting. 930, big buy pressure. I now have a head, shoulder, and an impulse move to the downside, but it's not a very big impulse move, right? So then they come right back against it right afterwards, and they give the biggest buy pressure. I believe that's from the overnight. We'll have to look back to the left. It was. That is the biggest buy pressure. So something really interesting happens, right? Let's clear this up really quick so y'all can see this, all right? If this is your buy pressure right after the number, right? And this is your number right here at 930. And that was the swing off to the left right before the number, right? And we press all the way down. That now becomes your head, right? But the delta push down here wasn't very big, right? They fixed that because here comes your big negative delta, right? Now, we push up, we come down with a big negative delta, and then we come back with the biggest buy. Now remember, you could have just as easily started to argue that this is left shoulder, head, and push, or over here, left shoulder, head, and push, but I kind of throw out this data because it's before, right? It's before the number hits, right? So if you look, we make the biggest push to the upside, and what does the biggest push to the upside generate? Holy moly, absolutely nothing. We cannot clear above the biggest sell wave to the downside. We then get a shift. You'll see the red arrow down and the red speed bar. That tells me sell pressure is coming in. We are short at 55.20, basically right here and here. Now I will tell you, we cut it to half size. It wasn't a full size trade. Why? Because it's inventory number. Volatility is really high. I may need to adjust on the fly. I don't want to get killed. All really good reasons that I might need to take 2 shots. Cut your trade size down a little bit because they're pushing pressure so much, so volatile, right? Enter here. Now what do I need to do? I need to get underneath, right? If that's where all my buyers are and I need to trap somebody, that means I need to get underneath them, right? And look what happens. There's my algo being generated. There's my little red arrow. It tells me sell pressure's coming in, sell pressure underneath the wave. And it was adios, right? So now, how do I come up with a 55.20 target? How do you do that? Well, you go back to your chart and you go, you know, when I look at this, the only place that I have support on this thing, all right, let me erase any lines I might have drawn on this. There you go. That's how I posted it to the members. Was this big fat zone hit sitting here at 55.45. And if you look, we break. Here's the 55.20 break initially. This is what it looks like over here, right? Excuse me, 9:30, 9:30, 9:30. Right over here. This is that 55.20 break. We've already tested the top of this anomaly prior to the number. We came right down to 55.87, right? Pushed in, rotated back up for the number. So you kind of have to think, hey, first time a support zone, we clearly have a big fat downtrend in place. First time the support zone's tested, I bet we can break the back. And I bet that low that they try to hold it, but there's so much pressure, I bet we can push down to 54. So I kind of arbitrarily said I'm short 55.20. I know we can probably make it to this 54.94 area or 53.94 area. And I'm arbitrarily going to take 54.20 because it's 100 ticks. It's $1,000 a contract. Like, who the hell doesn't take that, right? And then I left a trailer, right? What I didn't do is I then took a break and I did not focus on getting down into our support area. And I will tell you, I attempted to short this 3 times. I lost 2 times on the back up here because I went off process. It's a conversation for another point. And I gave back a total of 20 ticks. And I then, at the end of the day, shorted this right up here at 55.20 or 55.23, right in there. And on a full size, and I pulled back the 20 ticks I gave back. And that was that. That's how I pulled that back in and ended up netting 80 and 100 ticks on that trade. It was very, very nice for the day. I had to do a little self-correction. I got tired and made a mistake at the end of the day there. But that's not a horrible, horrible day at all, actually. It's a very, very good day. So that is how we set up. And then in the afternoon, I'm going to leave you all with this, right? And this is all about understanding your price action, right? Internals were horrible in the afternoon, right? And I was looking for a place to short. And we start to rally. You can see me doing all my little work is still left over from there, right? See up there at 28.62? And I'm looking for a way to set up a roll back to retest the low or break the low. That's what I want. So number one, we've had a fat rotation, right? 28.41 to 28.62, 20 ES points, right? Number two, where's my biggest or last push up and my biggest push down? So my biggest push down or my last biggest push down is this baby right here. See that? We kind of lost sell pressure after that, right here. So I highlight that. Why do I highlight that? Because I think I got that right. If we get above it, right, they are probably going to push higher. That's what the bulls needed to get above, right? We get this big push right here, and it really absorbed. And if you look, they exhausted themselves just trying to get above this push and push it into the last sell wave. It wasn't even the biggest sell wave. It's just the last sell wave. So then we go into analysis once we're in here, right? How do I set up the trade? So to be direct, I wasn't sure. I had a feeling we could close at the low, but I didn't know that we could close at the low. So I go back on process. Remember, I got run over 2 times in CL on smaller positions, right? With smaller stops, but I still gave back a chunk of money, a total of 20 ticks, right, combined. So I'm kind of sitting here trying to think this through. Well, how does this want to look? Well, number one, what I needed, here I'm going to erase this and do it again. Needed a fractal on top. Had my biggest push, right? So this push made sense, right? And I know that that push will act as support down here, which it did, right? That's going to act as support initially. I also know that this is my old swing high from earlier in the day, right here. And I know if I push above that, right? See that right there? They tried above multiple times. I know if I push above that, they're probably going to make a break to the upside. They're really working really hard. But you'll notice how much delta is, and they just kind of peekaboo above here, right? But they don't close back into the prior wave. Everything is cool, right? Then they come up a second time, and they poke their head above. This time, these tell me important pieces of information, and it tells me this is where the point of control was on this bar. They shifted up, speed bar shift down. That's a very, very nice combo. I short I believe I'm short right here, 28.58 and a quarter. Let's go to the tape and make sure we got that right. Let's see, we'll go to the room and see what it says. And I'll say, there you go, 12:55 p.m. Short 28.58 quarter, half size, big stop 10. Will be out net 5-point loss and looking to add but lower or trade 2 times after stop. So the alternative was, or take the times, trade 2 times with a 4-point stop, load twice, right? So, and then you'll see again where I was also trying to grab the CL trade. That CL trade actually ended up being up 40 cents, and I still took a stop on it because I thought it would roll to the downside. I was wrong, so I left some money on the table and took a little bit of a loss on it, right? So, net, this is where I'm short, but I'm short later. You know what? I am short here at 12.50. Oh, you know what it was? I am short on this speed bar shift down 58 quarter. I'm short right here, excuse me. I just did not write it in, but it had to be either here or here, and this makes sense. 58 and a quarter. Right, and I put a 5-point stop, so I thought we could, the mid was 28.64, excuse me, 10-point stop, and I thought we could possibly test up into the mid and reject out of the mid and then roll lower, right? Now, if you look, we also have something very cool going on here. Left shoulder, head, and now what I don't want is to get above my left shoulder, right? And you'll see when they push back up, they don't. What I wanted, see this bar right here? I wanted that combo to end up right here so I could push that trade to a full-size trade. I don't get it. What I do get is roll all the way down to 28.43 where I covered it, half of it, excuse me, covered half of it, and then I was looking for another entry to add. This is where I got that other entry. I actually sat on that trailer all afternoon. I moved my stop to 28.60. And I just did not get this combo of bars on either swing high. It was actually a little frustrating. I didn't get that combo of bars because I would have been happy to add here or add over here. It just didn't work out to push it to full size. So what I ended up with was quarter size, and I covered that all. You'll see there, I just didn't get the speed bar, and I ended up covering at 28.40 on the close, and that is that. So very, very good day, and I will take that every day of the week. Trading volatility is hard. Make sure you can see that even though I went through the process quickly, we have an in-depth process and we follow it step by step. It's not easy to learn, but it is very profitable, right? If you're interested in learning about it, contact me. My email is TRADENPERFORM, TRADENPERFORM @gmail.com. And I am my name is Simon, and I'm more than happy to extend a 5-day pass into the room. Be ready to learn if you're coming in the room. I also do one-on-one coaching, although there's not a lot of space for one-on-one coaching right now. But if you're interested, email me. I'm happy to send out a pass. The room is $95 a month. No secrets there, not a lot of money, a whole lot of learning. Hope everyone had a great day. We'll be back at it in the morning, and I will talk to y'all soon. Have a great night. Trade well. See you guys.